Recording on my end. All right. So whenever you are
Yep.
ready, we good to go. Yo, you know what I had to do, man? I had to turn off my Wi-Fi because last time when I was talking to you, I had my Wi-Fi on. Bro, what a disaster! But the audio came out so choppy, and like the later halves of like the videos we did, it's like and I'm not worried about it because I know you have it. But shit, it's like unrecognizable. Like I couldn't
Wow.
hear shit.
Which one was that? Which one?
The very last one we did. Yeah, the
Right.
very last one we
Okay.
did just came out horrible. The first two, there was a little choppy issues, but then the later halves just were gone. So I was like, I'm not worried about it.
Yeah. So what was the problem with that?
It was too choppy. I couldn't even hear anything. It just came
Yeah.
out like
How? Why was that? Your Wi-Fi was bad or
my
something
Wi-Fi.
like
Yeah,
that?
I don't have it on now. It should be good now, but I think I had it on that day, and since I'm like in my car and I'm away from my home, I think that's what happened. It caused a reception issue because every time that you and I talk, I never have that problem. But now it's like it was just really choppy. So I was like, fuck it, I
Yeah.
turned it off.
Disappointing when that happens, mate.
Yeah,
So anyway, anytime you want a file, just ask me now and I'll send it
yeah,
over.
yeah, for sure.
Um. So yeah. Have you got any topics today? I want to address with you the origins of humanity. And then you know like I was just speaking about, really feeling the vibration of Gaia and
Uh-huh.
animals as opposed to human beings. Because since I've been taking a lot of psychedelics, I've become very empathic in relation to feeling other humans' vibration. And this is why I'm pretty reclusive these days because
Mhm.
I don't want to be around them
Yeah,
because they're so uh, automated. They're so tense. They're so angry. They're so tight. And whenever you just you basically you can't enter into a free flow conversation because as soon as you start talking to somebody, if they are talkative, then all they want to do is unload their pain onto you, unload
yeah,
their frustration, and it's kind of like, hang on, I'm not getting paid for this shit,
uh-huh.
you know. I'll just rather engage in, you know, nice free flow stuff. You see, I live in a, quiet village and, it's very rural and, got my pet squirrel and I feed all the animals. So I've got teams of birds and, a dozen squirrels in my garden and they all know me and, they're not, too shy and they'll come within 6 or 8 feet of me. Most of them will, whilst mine's sitting on my shoulder eating his breakfast.
Yeah.
It's such
I
a
saw the I
beautiful
saw the
thing,
videos. So it is beautiful. I really really love that video. I
Yeah,
actually look at that. I looked at it a couple of times. It just reminds me of all the stuff that happens here in the garden as well. But animals are amazing, aren't they?
yeah. Well, I did an update on Providence. I made
Mhm.
probably about 30 videos on him.
I saw
And
all of them.
yeah,
I think.
I still make the odd one now, and I will upload them. But because I'm concentrating on my book, then I don't want to be distracted with that. But every morning, because I feed him and the others at daybreak, I'm out in it, and I listen to all the different nuances depending on the weather, depending on the time of year, depending on how hungry they are, and there's a whole ecology and a vibration which you get involved with once you're just chilled and once
Yeah.
you just open and once you just look and listen. And then I'd be speaking to my neighbors and they're all old here, and some days I'd comment on the clouds, amazing, and then they'd say like, oh, I can't look at the clouds, I'll fall over if I look at the clouds. And I said, well, surely you can just raise your eyes like this. I get it, your neck's probably stiff and all that, but they're not interested in looking at the sky. They're just too closed. And it's kind of like, wow. And very often they can come out in the garden, they'll be speaking to me, and they won't even notice that Providence is sitting on my shoulder. And
Yeah.
I'll say to them, I said, you seen my squirrel lately? And they go, well, I think I saw him a couple of days ago. And I said, so you've not seen him today? No, not at all. No. What about this? And they go, oh, you bugger. I didn't see him there. They don't see anything, Ziggy. People don't see anything, do they?
No, they don't.
It's
I,
bizarre.
I do this purposely. Sometimes I'll ask people the most random question just to see what their responses are. it could be a weird question, but out of the blue, and I don't know why I do this. I just get a kick out of it. It's just sometimes it's just like I feel like they short circuit or they just it's like it's not scripted in their life to hear something weird. So they just
Yeah,
don't know. They just freeze, and I'm like, I look at them, and I'm like, "Are you okay?" They just short circuit. But
yeah.
yeah, uh
They don't have any redress on that. They just it's another language, and in the early chapters in my book, I was speaking about that. Because when we become awoken, and we see the world in a very very different way, then our level of inquiry is very different, and when we engage with people, it's just completely on a different
yeah,
level. It's not on the mundane. It's not on the stress. It's not about the shit weather. It's just naturally philosophical or spiritual, and people just they're not in that vibration, they're not used to it, they don't know how to respond to it, and they'll go, oh, that's a bit deep, and I'm like, my god,
mhm,
if you just like speak just remotely philosophical, oh, that's deep, if you're not talking about what's on the news, then that's it, it's all over, isn't it?
yeah.
And so it's a very peculiar thing, and it really is curious. And so, in my book, I'm speaking to people like us, and I'm making reference sometimes to, people like them.
Mhm.
And I'm just wondering, because of the title, Closer to God, I suppose I'm going to get quite a few people that are going to look at the title and, pick it up, thinking that it's going to be a pro-religious book. But in actual fact, it isn't a pro-religious book. It's a pro-spiritual book, and it, pretty well is very dismissive of lots of facets of religion, particularly the dogmatic facets. I mean,
Yeah.
there's some, nurturing and beneficial facets, but the whole dogma and the stories that you're supposed to believe literally, well, it's just preposterous. Um, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what sort of response I get from what sort of people. And
Because
so yeah,
you said that I'm not gonna. When you said you re-edited the book, you said I wasn't gonna recognize it because it was like so different.
yeah.
Anything you could share that's on it that's really different from like the first version, and why so much of it was changed?
Well, I mean, I think what happened is because there was so much information, 14 years of
Hmm.
stuff that I needed to get down, because it was a weight, and it was building up over many years that I was going to be writing this book. And, I kept asking myself, well, when's it going to happen? And I would, ask the cosmos, do you want me to write this book or not? I know you do, but when? Time's just passing by. And I tried to have some level of governance over me writing it. And I tried to sit down and thought, okay, maybe it just needs me to actually get down to business. But it didn't. And I couldn't do it until the certain time was right, the certain conditions, and then all of a sudden it just flowed out. But because it all flowed out, then of course it's like the blueprint. And now what I'm doing is I'm going back and I'm actually filling in the depth and the nuances, and going off on tangents and all different sorts of things. And so each chapter is becoming greatly elongated. The whole preface I completely changed, because it it just didn't feel like spirit was really guiding that bit.
Hmm.
It was more like ego. It was more like my anger as to why,
Hmm.
I had my spiritual awakening. And so I went back and, rewrote it with a much more softer approach. And, and so, yeah, it will be very different. Um, and vastly much longer. And at the end, I'm going to be really getting out there with certain chapters, um, and those they're going to involve things like energy fields,
Hmm.
egregores, even our own ego is an egregore. And when you look deeply into what this egregore thing is, it's a whole phenomenon unto itself. And we could be considered to be gravely losing our traction on reality when we start to express ourselves in a deep spiritual philosophical way.
Right.
But there's no way I can avoid it. I've just got to say it, because this thing is deep, it's rich, and it's just unbelievable. It
Yeah.
really is unbelievable.
When
And
you
so
when you say energy fields, what where in that can you go into like the energy fields and whatnot? Is that uh as far as the nature of the universe goes? Um, Information on the energy fields. What can you say about that from your book?
yes, well, I mean, what I've noticed, that of course, like Tesla said, everything is energy.
Hmm.
And so when we engage with an animal on a certain vibration, it's tangible, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so I listened to your and Zach's conversation, about an hour ago. And Zach, has been a long time viewer of my channel, and we spoke, several times, a good number of years ago, 5, 6 years ago, something like that. And he has, this, inquiring mind. We're looking for stuff, and we find it absolutely fascinating. But the energy of everything, everything is just energy. We monitor our own energy when we engage with other people. Energy is very obvious now. And then when you're in a certain environment, even walking on tarmac or pavement, as soon as I step off of the tarmac or the pavement onto the natural ground, the energy changes in an instant.
Hmm.
And the conversations that myself and Paul always have, we're still doing it to this day. We've become very astute at these sort of things. We notice the difference when we buy water, whether we're in a relatively new woodland, whether we're by trees that are 500 years old, or whether we're trees that are less than 100 years old, whether they're oak trees, whether they're pine trees. There's a vast difference of the level of energy and spirit. There's a spirit there.
Yeah.
And oh my God, some of these spirits, man, they seriously unnerve you. Um, you never you never feel threatened by them, which is a very, it sounds an outlandish thing to say, but you are most certainly intimidated. And whenever I take shrooms, I always do it in the company of trees. And, I've had bizarre things happen to me. Like one of the chapters I wrote in the book where the trees lured me in to feed on my libidinal energy. They were having a sexual relationship with me. They wanted human sexual energy. And of course, the libidinal energy is what Freud termed as human energy. It is actually human energy because all human energy is sexual. And so they were feeding on that. And this went on for about half an hour. And at the end, there was an air, an aura of satisfaction in the wood that they had sampled the human energy. You see, because these woods I go in, they're out of bounds and have been out of bounds for well over 100 years. This national park, well, I go to several, but one in particular has been owned by landed gentry for hundreds of years, and it's been passed down. And this region is built on Precambrian rock, which is 650 million years old. And this region is one of the very few regions in the whole of Europe where these rocks protrude out of the earth. And so we have that privilege, and there's an energy there. And so these natural woods, they are encircled in these fabricated uh, Precambrian rock walls. They are not held together with mortar. They're very, very old style, where it was a wonderful skill to build these walls which would stay erect for hundreds of years. And so you all the stones have to be leaning, very slightly into the center of gravity, and they're all interlocked and bearing the similar sort of weight, and they're incredible. And so when I go into these forbidden realms, as soon as you get over the wall, then it's like entering into Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you expect pixies and elves to be jumping around. Uh, but when you take psychedelics, then the trees talk to you. You'll see faces in the trees, and they actually have, you know, their faces will be visual, and they'll be the inanimate, Um, and this is why I'm, donning this whole green man thing, because the spirit of the green man has, well, what can you say? I mean, look at my door behind me. That door that
Yeah.
that just came to me. And in the middle at the top, I don't know whether you can see it there.
Yeah, I can see
There's
it.
a green, yeah, there's a green
Yeah.
man, and so that just came, and that I just created that, and my whole house, is given to all these different sorts of artifacts from the natural environment, because I have
Are
brought the
those
spirit.
are are those real leaves?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, don't get better than that, man.
No, and so these leaves, I've gathered them over many years, or several
Hmm.
years at least, and I picked them from many variety of tree
Yeah.
throughout different times of the year, and lots of the trees, you wouldn't think, but if you pick the leaves in the summertime, they'll retain their chlorophyll. Whereas most people would think that if you take a leaf from the tree, then when it dies, it goes brown. Well, that's not so, because many of the leaves up on my walls, I mean, there's one just there. If you can see that one,
Yep.
it's a variety of maple, and it's yellow and green.
Yep.
And there's lots of instances of that. These leaves retaining their color. You see, because what happens with leaves when the fall is coming, the tree takes back its sap, and it takes back all the chlorophyll out of the leaves. And of course, the chlorophyll is the chemical which enables photosynthesis,
Hmm.
and the chlorophyll, it gives the green color. But when the tree takes that back, then it leaves the skeleton of the leaf, which doesn't have the green color. Um, and so, it's a fallacy that, when you pick them, they die and they go brown. It just
Yeah.
depends what time of year you pick them,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
all these sort of things. People are astonished to be privy to this sort of thing, because it is something that you would never think. And so when we're out and about and we're investigating all these things, then when we are very, very finely tuned into things, well, we notice things. And so energy fields, yes, an energy field of a school of fish, an energy field of a beehive or an ant colony or a flock of birds, an energy field of squirrels. There's
Hmm.
squirrel world just outside my window. There's jackdaw world. There's blackbird world. There's Robin World. All of these worlds, they have their own energy and atmosphere, and they all overlay each other like simulacrums.
Hmm.
And many of these animals, they have no awareness really of each other. Um, because they know that the certain animals are not a threat, and so they pay them no mind at all.
Yeah.
When you see pigeons are very, aggro. They're always asserting themselves, but they would never ever dream of asserting themselves with another variety of bird. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And so, you can see that if you've got four pigeons on the ground, they'll be fighting amongst themselves, Whereas the jackdaws and the blackbirds and the squirrels will all be either eating in the same vicinity, only it's kind of like they're not recognizing each other.
Yeah.
And so there's energy fields there, evidently.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there's lots of things like that, I'm going to be elaborating on and really getting down into the nitty gritty of all this stuff. And ultimately, I don't know where it's leading. It uh, I just think, because this book I'm writing, as long as I'm living, it will never end.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be volume 2, 3,
Yeah.
4. The more I take psychedelics, the more I evolve, the more meditation I do, the more downloads and insights I get. Well, of course, that needs, tagging on, to the first volume.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just, an amazing journey through life. And so, you know, I don't have um, any timeline on the book as to when it should be finished, because it's not down to me. It's
Yeah.
not down to the ego of
Hmm.
Aaron Berry. I'm just a portal. The universe is working through me. Spirit is working through me. There's something that it wants me to convey, and I'm very happy to do it. And I'm doing it in a very nuanced way. And for anyone that is spiritually inclined, um, you see, when we read copious amounts of books, there comes a time when we really know how to read. When we start off, we just reading, it's kind of like surface, it's all superficial. But when you really read, you sit down with a book and it's an experience. It's like sitting down with a lover, engaging with a lover. You
Hmm.
sit down with that book and you feel the energy of the author. The author had something that they wanted to convey,
Yeah.
and there's a depth to it. And if you don't get into that vibration, you won't feel or resonate with that depth. And
Yeah.
you'll just be reading the words, and then you put the book down. And then, like a week later, someone say, "Oh, what was that book like?" You go, "Can't remember, to be fair," because you was never with it. And so, what I do when I'm reading now is that I'll read, a few pages at a time. And often I just sit and I contemplate and I absorb that and I feel it and I ask myself, what is he trying to convey, or she? What actually is the energy? And of course, because I'm reading very philosophical, deep stuff, pertaining to the nature of the cosmos and religions and all that sort of thing, um, this stuff is vastly too deep and complex for the vast majority of the human being.
Hmm.
Mm, For many reasons. One, they're not interested in that level of depth. Two, they don't have the philosophical wherewithal for it. Three, they're too busy. Four, they're not spiritually endowed to enter into that vibration. People don't have that vibration. My battery is running low.
On
Hang on,
your
some
on what?
yeah, on my computer. Hang on, there's something going on. I don't know why it does that with charging.
And by the way, just make sure we cover this because there's always a lot of people asking, "Are you there?" Hope we didn't lose them. Are you there? Can you hear me? Are you there, bro? All right, so I'm gonna hang this one up, and then we'll get another part, and then we're gonna get to the meat and nitty gritty topics of the video. So stay tuned, and yeah, part two coming. We'll talk soon.